Coming up on Bruce Lee Lives. Everyone wanted to emulate him.
All the kids in our neighborhood all the boys wanted to be, Bruce Lee, all of them.
Movie stars wanted to fight like him.
Keanu Reeves trying to fight Kung Fu and trying to move as fast as he can. And that's Bruce Lee.
And plenty have tried to cash in on him.
I had Bruce Lee action figures, magazines, t-shirts.
Bruce Lee kicked ass in the movies.
When I was a kid, my brother and we used to just watch him and then beat the hell out of each other.
Creating a pop culture sensation that shapes modern media to this day.
Kill Bill, there's definitely an homage to Bruce Lee.
Especially in a fantasy game. I really loved the idea of doing a martial arts character.
And the Bruce Lee potency shows no sign of losing its power.
It's homogenized in the culture.
He will be the Bruce Lee forever.
It's Bruce Lee, the trendsetter, on Bruce Lee Lives.
Interview, take one.
Would you describe yourself as a Bruce Lee superfan?
I am absolutely a Bruce Lee superfan.
He was like the epitome of coolness.
The shades and the hair and the clothes. Such a badass.
You can't think of Kung Fu films without mentioning his name.
It was the first time that we had seen these awesome moves.
I mean, he could use nunchucks and knock a fly off a wall with them from 6 feet away.
He wanted to emulate Bruce Lee.
You can see little kids running around with Bruce Lee t-shirts and imitating him still to this day.
I mean, there's so many different people trying to do what he did.
It just dawns on me every time I hear something go, "Wah!" I mean, what a cultural icon he is.
Bruce Lee. He was one of Hollywood's most iconic figures. And the cultural phenomenon that surrounds him continues to rage.
He left an indelible cultural imprint behind, in every single way, not only in his chosen field, but just in pop culture.
Now, Bruce Lee Lives, in the series that celebrates the life and legacy of the greatest martial artist of all time. On this episode, we take on Bruce Lee, the trendsetter. Bruce Lee first achieved stardom nearly 4 decades ago. Today, he remains a powerful cultural figure. His imprint can be found throughout pop culture.
Everyone has seen a Bruce Lee movie. I used to love them all when I was a kid. My brother and we used to just watch them and then beat the hell out of each other.
There is simply no denying Bruce Lee's mass appeal. But how did one man come to own his icon status? He had the it factor.
He was smooth. He was handsome. He was a star. He had presence. He had grace about him. Something that you couldn't teach. This was who he really was.
He had a certain something, a mojo, a quality that just, it's timeless.
Bruce Lee was a standout in any crowd. And his natural charisma caught the attention of some very important eyes following a karate tournament in 1964.
He caught the eye of a producer who had said, yeah, you know what, this is really amazing. You've got this incredible physical presence and you're obviously an amazing fighter.
Bruce had the speed, the power, and the precision that made him shine in competition. But that wasn't all. He radiated charisma, and he knew how and when to turn on the charm.
As much as he was like the fighter and the martial arts, but he also had a certain kind of charm to him. You know what I mean?
He knew he had it, and he did use it. Yes, of course.
And that's exactly what he did.
My last name is Lee, Bruce Lee.
During a screen test for the Green Hornet, he laid on the charm.
Or, if I can back up a little bit, they start back from here, and then come back. All right. It's kind of worried.
The Bruce Lee charisma landed a knockout.
There's something really amazing that Bruce exudes when he was on screen.
You can YouTube his screen tests for the studios, and you see in those screen tests, right, that not only is he an expert kung fu dude, he is a movie star.
As Bruce Lee's popularity grew, it wasn't just personality and charm that got him noticed. He had real physical allure and a slick sense of style that was totally original.
He had fashion sense.
Bruce Lee's style is timeless.
He's like almost like a pimp, dude. He'd like seriously look good like all the time. Like just flashy dresser, always had the big Hollywood shades on.
He wore like dope glasses. He had a cool haircut.
No one would dispute the fact that he was a good-looking guy. The ladies loved when he took off his shirt. It's interesting because he probably weighed a $130 wet, but he was ripped.
He was tight looking, fat to bone, dude.
Bruce Lee fashioned just the right look, but he didn't just wear his cool. He spoke it too.
You got to listen. Listen.
There was a way he talked. There was a way he talked. Everything was pronounced. You know what I mean?
If you try to remember, you will lose.
He knew how he wanted to be perceived. He knew what he believed in, and he knew what everybody should know about him. His swag was just so articulate. You know what I mean?
That free your mind quote. You must free your mind.
Like water.
Be like water. Water goes into a cup. It becomes the cup. It's such a simple philosophical idea. You know what I mean? But the way he says it, be like water, my friend. My friends. I mean, that's so nice. You call me your friend.
Bruce Lee's distinctive way of speaking was part of his unique package, just like his sharp sense of humor.
You could tell his personality could be someone who's a jokester.
He was a comedian. That's the one thing that people don't know about him. He was hysterical.
The way he would answer his questions were just direct, looking at you in the eyes, just very confident. Maybe would have a little smirk or smile if he thought something was funny.
Wow. One time, my dad was engaged in this very philosophical conversation with my godfather.
I could confide with him in any subject that I wanted. I considered him, at that time period, my closest friend.
And my godfather says, Dan, I want you to take this coin and I want you to balance it very carefully, from your head all the way down your nose, all the way to your chin. And so my father, of course, does it. And then all of a sudden my godfather just breaks out into this huge laughter and he goes, look in the mirror, look in the mirror. And then there's my father with a big dark line down his face. So, that's the side that, I knew of Bruce Lee. He was a great, comedian in his personal life.
And I think that's the beautiful thing about the man.
Bruce Lee had indisputable poise, wit, and charm. But he didn't just radiate cool during his lifetime. His off-the-charts charisma would ignite public fascination for decades, cementing his iconic status long after his sudden and tragic death shocked fans around the world. Coming up, Bruce Lee takes Hollywood by storm.
When Enter the Dragon was first released, it was like the equivalent of Star Wars.
And then, a new breed of action hero learns from the master.
When we were doing Charlie's Angels, he was a huge influence.
For a star with such universal allure, Bruce Lee spent a surprisingly short time making movies.
When you look at Bruce Lee's film career, it's really short. I mean, that's just insane, But they were really powerful, genre-changing films.
He completed only 4 major films before his acting career came to a tragic halt. On July 20th, 1973, Bruce Lee died at age 32. Ironically, he would not live to see the opening of the one film that would catapult him to international fame.
Enter the Dragon.
Enter the Dragon.
Enter the Dragon. Enter the Dragon. Enter the Dragon.
My favorite Bruce Lee movie was Enter the Dragon.
The year was 1973, and Bruce Lee mania was about to take hold.
When Enter the Dragon was first released to the world, it really was phenomenal. It was like the equivalent of Star Wars. It really was.
One of the producers invited me to the premiere of Enter the Dragon. It was at the Chinese Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, naturally. And I went to see it, and I didn't even know what I was going to see. And I had not really heard about Bruce Lee.
The movie is illuminated in every frame by the presence of Bruce Lee. But what's amazing about Enter the Dragon is how well written it is, how well structured it is, how beautifully it's shot.
It made people realize in Hollywood, wow, here's a genre we've ignored. I think Hollywood had a real wake-up call that, there's something here. Meanwhile, the world got to see a star and to see this amazing man on the screen capture everybody's hearts and imagination.
When I saw Enter the Dragon, I was watching a fresh hero. I was watching a hero I'd never seen before.
Enter the Dragon was a massive hit, grossing over $90 million worldwide. Bruce Lee the man was gone, but demand for Bruce Lee the movie star began to skyrocket.
Because of Enter the Dragon's success, everybody wanted more Bruce Lee films.
Bruce Lee actually had been working on another film before he died, Game of Death. But production had been halted on the project so that Enter the Dragon could be completed first. Only 100 minutes of footage had been shot at the time of Lee's death, and the film had to be finished without him.
When I found out that he actually died in the process of making Game of Death, it became that much more special to me to watch the whole process.
And it was hard to think how to finish it without Bruce Lee.
When Game of Death resumed production in 1978, it relied on some fairly comical tricks to make up for its missing star. Rudimentary fighting techniques and body doubles weren't an ideal fix.
Patience, that's not one of our virtues.
But they did signal a new trend, finding ways to cash in on the Bruce Lee name.
Everybody that had ever shook Bruce's hand that was in the martial arts put his picture up on the wall. Good business.
Suddenly, everybody wanted to make martial arts films. Everybody wanted to be the hotshot martial arts guy who just looks like $1 million while he's kicking the crap out of somebody.
Everyone wanted to capitalize on the Bruce Lee money train. His movies gained a new audience as box sets of his classic films are released.
Let's see what you're made of.
Okay.
And Kung Fu Theater becomes a popular weekend program on television. The art of imitation also took hold, as Bruce Lee clones and spoofs on his original films became prevalent.
There's a movie called The Last Dragon, which is almost like a spoof. Bruce Leroy, great movie. There was an old comedy called They Still Call Me Bruce.
This is when the great era of Bruceploitation comes in which you basically took a bunch of guys, some of which, could throw a punch or a kick semi-well, some of which just looked Asian. The producers didn't care. And you gave them a name that sort of sounded like Bruce Lee. But he wasn't exactly Bruce Lee. The most well-used Bruce Lee impersonator was a guy named Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee, no one's gonna tell the difference, right?
But the Bruce Lee difference still holds a dominant place in cinematic culture.
Still today, his name is synonymous with, Kung Fu.
Bruce Lee set a whole new standard for Kung Fu heroes. Killer athletic ability, plus acting chops to boot.
Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris is a good martial artist.
You had the Jackie Chans and the Jet Lis.
There's great guys, Jackie Chan, Jet Li.
Would there be a Jackie Chan with no Bruce Lee?
In fact, the matter is, we wouldn't know who Jackie Chan was, or who Jet Li was, or who a lot of these martial artists that have become huge in the last, 20, 30 years. It all boils down to the fact that we still want Bruce Lee.
Guys who have come after him, they've never been able to capture that look and that feel and that expertise.
But it's not only martial arts stars that should bow to the master. Bruce Lee set the bar for modern-day action heroes across the board.
There would be no Stallone and no Rocky and no Arnold and no Jason Statham, none of the sons of Bruce Lee without this guy pointing the way. Stallone can box. Those muscles are real. Jason Statham can fight. That's not fake.
And you can see it now with all these guys that still have that kind of swagger about them, that sort of I'm a fighter kind of swagger about them. That dates back to Bruce Lee.
When we were doing Charlie's Angels, he was a huge influence for us.
Still to this day in the Bourne movies, we use the school that he started. We use their choreography.
From Charlie's Angels to the Bourne Identity, the mark of Bruce Lee's brilliance remains a powerful force to be reckoned with.
It's beyond legend status, you could say. Legends accomplish things, but he set the standard for things.
If imitation is the highest form of flattery, Bruce Lee's been held in very high esteem, as look-alike actors and cheap kung fu film knockoffs were standard fare. But public fascination would eventually shift as the interest in copying Bruce Lee waned. The drive to honor him gained momentum.
And I'm in this little tiny village, remote village in Italy, and there's postcards of my godfather. And I'm thinking, this is just amazing. Then I'm in Mexico in some other remote village, and there's a poster of him.
Evidence of Lee's influence can be found throughout the pop culture landscape as well, especially in modern movies.
When you watch Kill Bill, who do you think about? Bruce Lee.
Kill Bill, which is this huge Valentine that Quentin Tarantino does to Asian cinema in general.
With Quentin Tarantino and Kill Bill, you know, there's definitely an homage to Bruce Lee.
Homogenized in the culture. We all know Game of Death. Like, we all know the yellow tracksuit.
Still see the yellow tracksuits today.
The Bruce Lee imprint made a mark on the Matrix films as well, in a scene directly influenced by Way of the Dragon.
This is the way he moved those hands.
The Bruce Lee aesthetic was really what was in force.
When you actually see Keanu Reeves trying to fight Kung Fu and like trying to move as fast as he can. And that's Bruce Lee.
Everything about him is just bleeding Bruce Lee.
Reinventing classic scenes from Bruce Lee movies is a habit in Hollywood, as are attempts to replay his signature moves, like thumbing his nose and releasing a rebel yell to cue a fight. But certain Bruce Lee trademarks exist on a much larger scale. Mass merchandising.
I had Bruce Lee action figures, magazines, t-shirts.
I don't know anybody who didn't have a Bruce Lee poster back in the day.
And I know there was at one point a line of martial arts products that had his name or his likeness on them, like the sparring pads that I had that were Bruce Lee.
Even leaders in music and sports have shown their adoration. But nothing signifies Bruce Lee quite like his weapon of choice.
Oh, dude, the nunchucks.
When you think about nunchucks, who do you think about?
I think every boy my generation had a pair of nunchucks.
Dude, when I saw Bruce Lee with nunchucks, the whole deal, I ordered a ninja suit, I ordered nunchucks, Chinese stars, I had all the stuff. Like, I asked my mom, Mom, I want some nunchuck.
All the kids in our neighborhood all the boys wanted to be Bruce Lee, all of them.
His legacy still looms large on screen, and fans around the world continue to emulate Bruce Lee. But he lives on virtually as well, in video and computer games that graphically showcase his fighting style. Popular series such as Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Soul Calibur, and Tekken all have characters based on Bruce Lee. At Blizzard Entertainment, one of the world's leading video design companies, Jay Wilson finds Bruce Lee an inspiration for his creations.
I love Hong Kong action films. So much of that kind of was, for me, the door was opened, and so many of those things inspired me throughout my career.
When it came time to design something new, Wilson knew just where to turn.
When we were working on Diablo 3 and we had choices of different characters to make, the one that I kind of championed the strongest was the monk. And the reason was that I really loved the idea of doing a martial arts character, especially in a fantasy game. That the idea of basically taking forward the philosophy of Bruce Lee, all that inspiration.
And while video games put the Bruce Lee legacy in motion, comic books revere the master in print. Marvel Comics editor-in-chief Axel Alonso has been responsible for reinventing comic book characters like the X-Men and Spider-Man. But his fascination with the genre stems from Kung Fu.
One of my favorite comics was Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, which was, of course, inspired by the Kung Fu action era, which was, of course, inspired by Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was instrumental in the formation of Kung Fu comics.
Shang-Chi was a 1970s Kung Fu comic by Marvel. Its main character, patterned after Bruce Lee, gave the comic book hero a whole new twist.
Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, unlike Spider-Man or the Hulk, this guy had no superpowers. He just was one hell of a fighter. Like Bruce Lee, Shang-Chi was all about inner calm and peace. He was not inherently violent at all. He used violence only in defense and as a means to an end.
The key to immortality.
The key to immortality
is first
living a life.
Living a life worth remembering.
For nearly 40 years, Bruce Lee has remained the ultimate pop icon. But of the many ways we've paid tribute, from action figures to comic book heroes, video games to vintage t-shirts, one honor ranks the highest. That of hero.
Because he was a massive hero to me.
A real hero. He was a superhero in my mind.
When you're a little kid, especially being a small kid, like you always look up to these like heroes that like can make you feel like you can have that strength or whatever. And Bruce was that guy for me.
Bruce he's an icon.
He owns it and will. I can't imagine there being another star that comes along that encapsulates the beauty, the power, the iconography of Bruce Lee.
He will be the Bruce Lee forever.
He is the man.
An icon creates, an icon inspires, an icon endures. And so, Bruce Lee lives.
Interview, take one.
Would you describe yourself as a Bruce Lee superfan?
I am absolutely a Bruce Lee superfan.
He was like the epitome of coolness.
The shades and the hair and the clothes. Such a badass.
You can't think of Kung Fu films without mentioning his name.
It was the first time that we had seen these awesome moves.
I mean, he could use nunchucks.
And he left an indelible cultural imprint behind, in every single way. Not only in his chosen field, but just in pop culture.
Now, Bruce Lee lives in the series that celebrates the life and legacy of the greatest martial artist of all time. On this episode, we take on Bruce Lee, the trendsetter. Bruce Lee first achieved stardom nearly 4 decades ago. Today, he remains a powerful cultural figure. His imprint can be coming up on Bruce Lee Lives. Everyone wanted to emulate him.
All the kids in our neighborhood all the boys wanted to be, Bruce Lee, all of them.
Movie stars wanted to fight like him.
Keanu Reeves trying to fight Kung Fu and trying to move as fast as he can. And that's Bruce Lee.
And plenty have tried to cash in on him.
So I had Bruce Lee action figures, magazines, t-shirts.
Bruce Lee kicked ass in the movies.
When I was a kid, my brother and we used to just watch him and then beat the hell out of each other.
Creating a pop culture sensation that shapes modern media to this day.
Kill Bill, there's definitely an homage to Bruce Lee.
Especially in a fantasy game. I really loved the idea of doing a martial arts character.
And the Bruce Lee potency shows no sign of losing its power.
It's homogenized in the culture.
He will be the Bruce Lee forever.
It's Bruce Lee, the trendsetter, on Bruce Lee Lives.
Knock a fly off a wall with him from 6 feet away.
He wanted to emulate Bruce Lee.
You can see little kids running around with Bruce Lee t-shirts and imitating him still to this day.
I mean, there's so many different people trying to do what he did.
It just dawns on me every time I hear something go, "Wah!" I mean, what a cultural icon he is.
Bruce Lee. He was one of Hollywood's most iconic figures. And the cultural phenomenon that surrounds him continues to rage.